I'm a male, 26, and this happened around 3 years ago. When the US was practically recovered from COVID, I used to live in Long Island, New York, which is where the story takes place. For just a quick backstory for those who didn't grow up in New York, there's a huge railroad that connects lots of towns together, and the farthest it goes up to NYC. I took a business opportunity where I need to go up to the city every day for a walk as an engineer, and I would get on the train to go to the city as early as 6 a.m. And getting home sometimes would be as late as 11 p.m. Before taking this opportunity, I was never on the railroad during times like this, and I quickly came to learn that it was practically the same people on the train each time, all people going to the city and back for work, and I normally saw no new faces on my rides going there and back. One day though, that changed. I was on a late train probably around 10 or 11 p.m. at night during the winter time, so it was dark as the night got around those times. I ran to catch the railroad on time to get me home. So as you can normally expect, no matter the time, I can't find a seat on the train. I chose to stand next to the doors and was accompanied by two men who looked around my age, just chopping up good conversation, and a man he looked around to be in his late 50s. He was wearing a sort of Hawaiian shirt which was unbuttoned around two buttons, and his chest hair stuck out. He wore khakis, a belt, and attached to his shirt pocket he had what seemed to be a business key card on a retractable wire, which the clear sleeve it was in the yellowing. He was white, balding, but the hair I could see was grey, and he was more heavy set, but what I really remember are his eyes. Normally these kinds of details wouldn't be so prominent in my mind, but his mannerisms were nothing but out of the ordinary. The way this man examined the other two standing next to the doors, the ones in the deep conversation, it was uncanny. His eyes were deep in their sockets. They were downturned so the insides of the eyes, closer to his nose, were higher set than the outside corners, with a look that was so tired and sad, and his lips stayed in such a pouting expression that it nearly looked like he was taking sympathy for these men. The worst part? Every time they would make a joke, they would chuckle, but he would laugh. Louder than anyone would if they were even supposed to be included in the conversation. Just to keep my own privacy, I won't disclose which town exactly on Long Island I lived in, but I would say it's definitely one of the last stops on the train. The man definitely made me unsettled, but I didn't think to change my spot on the train. It was packed, and I was on the very first cart so that when I got to my destination, I could leave as soon as possible. I figured that I would wait to see if this man got off on the one stops before me, and I wish I didn't. He didn't seem like a threat to me because he was so hyper-focused on these two guys, but once we got to their stop, he took a few steps, basically followed them out of the cart until he saw me. I was staring. I'm not proud of it, but I had two headphones in listening to music, and I felt this man had to be studied, and I accidentally drew all the attention to myself. Something in his eyes switched for just a second, but it was horrifying. His eyes looked joyful, full of some type of childlike joy on Christmas or their birthday, and right then it was as if his feet just stopped, like they were dried in concrete, and he stayed on the train. That is when I wanted to scream. We were a few stops away from my stop, and I had no doubt in my mind that if this guy, seeing me made him jump from getting off at one stop, there's only one other stop he'll get off at. Mine. Now that I know this sounds like the dumbest thing ever, but I walked home from getting off the train. I'm a big guy, not super tall, but tall enough that most guys don't tower over me. And I'm not weak, so I never had anything to really worry about. Yeah, I wasn't scared of this guy himself, but what he could do. But it's more his intentions. I'm a guy who wouldn't fight someone for fun, and it's something that would be my last resort. And the last thing I wanted to do was throw hands with this man with such a sorrowful look in his eyes. That was my stop. I got off, and with no surprise, he did too. I started walking at a pace that didn't scream, "I'm scared," or "I need to get away." But I was at a pace that looked normal for me, but peering behind my shoulder, I saw him matching my pace. And it looked so unnatural, uncomfortable, like it hurt for him to walk at that pace. He continued to follow my pace, and no stores nearby were open for me to go to. So as I approached my house, I remember the hill that I had to climb to reach my street. And looking at the man still matching my pace to the very best of his abilities, he looked exhausted. So I just had to pray that he wouldn't be able to climb the hill as fast as me. I approached the bottom of the hill and sprinted as fast as I could and didn't stop until I reached my house and jumped over the backyard fence. Instead of going up to my front porch to open the door, on the chance he followed me fast enough to see me enter my house. My back door is sliding down, however, and I couldn't unlock it unless I was in the house. So the only thing I could do was sit and wait in a bush. And I wasn't too scared of him seeing me in the pitch black, but I was too scared of him hearing me if I moved. 2. I peered through my fence as I saw him climb up the hill, walking at more comfortable looking pace for him. He started looking around, looking for a sign of me. Nothing. He approached closer, just looking at my street, and under the streetlight I saw him. More like I saw his eyes, full of rage, no longer the joyful or sorrowful eyes I had once seen. I watched him pace back and forth on the road for a long time, until eventually he turned away and went down the hill once again. I waited for a long time before going into my house and going to bed. The next day I took the day off work. I went to the police and made a report, and for the rest of the day I decided that I wouldn't go straight from my stop to the railroad to the city anymore, and found a string of having to hop off one train to find another in hopes that man would take the direct route. I never saw the man after that. This is the first time I had fully retold the story since it happened, and I apologize for how long it is, but every time I even think about this story for too long, it reminds me of people that are out there, and how you have no idea what intentions they have behind their eyes. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you for listening to my story. I want to share a terrifying incident that just happened tonight involving my 11-year-old son and 2 of his friends, aged 10 and 14. They were playing at the local elementary school park near our apartment, enjoying a summer evening like any kid should be able to do safely. It was around 9 p.m, still light outside, and I just settled in when my son found me in complete panic. He told me that a man was chasing them, jumping fences, physically trying to catch them. The fear in his voice was unmistakable. As a parent, nothing prepares you for that kind of call. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys, jumped into my SUV, and sped around the corner to where they were. I stayed on the phone with my son, trying to reassure him while hearing the chaos unfold in the background. As I arrived on the school road, I saw the man actively pursuing the kids through the field. I did what any protective parent would do. I drove toward him, not hitting him directly, but getting close enough to stop the chase. I jumped out of my vehicle and confronted him face to face. He was clearly intoxicated and stunned that someone had intervened. I demanded to know what he was doing, used not so polite words, and made sure he understood how serious this was. He didn't offer much of an explanation, just mumbled and eventually took off down the block. Meanwhile, my son and his friends were shaking and terrified. It was genuinely a life-threatening situation for these kids, and I'm grateful nothing worse happened, but the emotional impact is real, and I won't let this be swept under the rug. I plan to file a police report tomorrow to make sure this is documented properly. I'm also posting this here in hopes of warning other parents in the area. Please check in with your kids if they've been out tonight near elementary. If anyone else encountered something similar or saw this man, I'll urge you to contact authorities. This kind of behavior, especially in a public space meant for children, is completely unacceptable. I'm incredibly proud of the kids for running and calling for help, and thankful I got there in time. Let's look out for one another, stay informed, and make sure our local parks remain safe places for everyone. I'm 18 now. This happened when I was 11 years old back in 6th grade. It was a holiday, so I didn't have school the next day. Me and my friends had this group chat so we don't have to text each person if we want to hang out. My friends John, David, and Tucker agreed to have a sleepover at John's house. John's parents are loaded, and they have a 3-story house with a pool, a basement, with a huge TV, and an arcade machine, and a bar. John asked if I wanted to come over, and I obviously agreed. I got there around 5 p.m, and we all went to his fort John built in the woods. enough of the unnecessary details. I'll skip to the important part. All four of us were messing around in this fort when we heard footsteps on the leaves below us. At first it was just me and Tucker that heard it, but we told John and David to listen. They heard it too. John told his dad about it over the phone, and he came out there, cleared the woods, and walked us back to the house. It wasn't until a few hours later that we were playing Fortnite or something on John's console when we get the idea to explore the woods, because apparently someone told John that there was some huge sketchy cabin in the woods. Stupidly, we all four agreed to go with flashlights. About 10 minutes later, we got to the cabin. It wasn't as big as we thought. Immediately, I noticed a horrible smell coming from inside, like something died in there. We found a broken window and entered through there. We split into twos and explored the cabin. Me and Tucker explored one side of the cabin while John and David explored the other. We found this small room that had an attic door on the ceiling. We didn't find anything weird in the room, just a bed and some furniture. When me and Tucker were in the attic, we heard John suddenly scream from the other room. Me and Tucker ran out from the attic and followed John and David, who were running back to his house. I didn't get an answer out of John until we got back in his basement when we said he saw a man, probably mid-40s, tall, skinny, lunging at him. We were all shaken on what he said. John also told us that he was sure he saw another person laying down in a pool of blood in there. We all tried to get over it, but David wanted to call the police to check out the cabin. We told John's dad about it, and he had a concerned look on his face. He also got mad at us for going in the woods, but he called the police eventually. 20 minutes later, like 10 state troopers and a search team came and went into that cabin. What they told us they found made my blood run cold. Apparently, there was a serial killer in that cabin, and when they found him, they found a dead corpse right beside him. They put him in cuffs, and when they went into the closet we were in, they found 3 other bodies all in a pool of blood. The victims were identified, but I never got their names. The scariest part is me and Tucker were just feet away from 3 dead bodies. All 4 of the poor victims got stabbed by a foot-long knife they later recovered. This happened 7 years ago today. 7 years ago was the scariest day of my life.